Welcome to your PMA Pro membership, your gateway to continued professional product marketing development. Whether you're new to the industry or an experienced practitioner, we've covered all bases with our variety of specialist content, including on-demand presentations, templates, exclusive content, mentors, toolkits, learning paths, and more. So let's take a look at exactly what could be all yours as a Pro member. Starting with exclusive articles, jam-packed with in-depth insights from experts at companies like Google, LinkedIn, HubSpot, and Drift. And we add new pieces to your dashboard every single week. Your template hub is packed with 50 plus vetted and tested templates and frameworks designed to streamline fundamental processes. Used by companies such as Slack, Microsoft, Twitter, and TikTok, rest assured, you and your team will be equipped with the best materials to enhance your practice. And better yet, we add new templates into your plan every month. Here at PMA, we have a busy event scheduled year-round. And as a Pro member, you'll get access to every presentation on demand to enjoy whenever and wherever you please. Better yet, you won't have to pay a cent to attend our virtual festivals and summits. The discounts don't stop there either. As a Pro member, you'll also get 10% off our suite of certification programs. After a structured learning experience, then our product marketing learning paths and toolkits are for you. Whether you've got a positioning overhaul on the horizon, want to upskill in sales enablement, or plan for next quarter's product launch, each toolkit and path features presentations, templates, and guides that'll help you hit the ground running and continue your professional development furthermore. Moving on to our peer councils. They're the perfect platform for live, virtual interaction, and the monthly gatherings allow you to connect with an intimate pod of product marketing leaders to strategize and collaborate. And last but not least is our mentor program. Whether you want to be a mentor, mentee, or both, you can accelerate your personal and professional growth by learning from product marketing heavyweights all over the world. So, with product marketing teams at globally recognized brands such as IBM, TikTok, Uber, and Amazon reaping the benefits of the stellar content on offer, why shouldn't you? Sign up for your PMM Pro membership and access a never-ending flow of tried, tested, and recommended tactics, learn from the leading lights in the industry, fast-track your professional development, and accelerate your career trajectory.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Product Marketing Trailblazers. We are about to dive right into another fantastic session today. I am joined for an in-depth fireside chat discussion with Ryan Goldman, who is the Vice President of Product Marketing at SoundCloud. And today we're going to be talking all about the product marketing super strategy. So welcome, Ryan. It would be great if you could start us off today with a little bit more about yourself and your journey into your current role.
Sure. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Rose. Yeah, ending up as a consumer product marketer is not in any way necessarily what I planned for myself, especially after years doing enterprise B2B product marketing. And even before that, frankly, my resume looks a little bit weird in that I spent the better part of a decade in Washington, D.C. doing policy work. So the farthest thing from marketing and technology at all, and trying to figure out how to deliver like school buses to needy girls in sub-Saharan Africa, or how to empower social entrepreneurs in the former Soviet Union and Latin America. So much different. However, wow. It's one of those things where, like, as a product marketer, there are lessons to be learned in every context. And so, in terms of how my career started and where it is now, I love that meme, like how it started, how it's going. How it started is, girls in faraway places needing access to education and schooling resources. How it's going now is not that different. right? The thing that product marketers need to think about always is beneficiaries, whether it's users, whether it's customers, whether it's developers, whether it's other organizations. Ultimately, it's all about beneficiaries, the people who are going to actually try and derive the most value from your product, whatever your product may be. And it's another challenge for product marketers, is to think about, like, what is the actual product? Sure, there is the feature, or there's the offering, but that may not be the product. So, I really took away from that experience, working in international development and NGOs, this idea, like, you always know who your beneficiary is, always know what the product is in terms of what they're using and the context in which they're using it, and how they need to understand how value is derived. So taking those skills and those observations about beneficiaries and actually moving them over into the business world, I started my tech marketing career at a company called Cisco. And as you imagine, it's a world different, right? At the time, Cisco was the biggest enterprise software company, or enterprise hardware and software technology company in Silicon Valley. And the beneficiary is harder to understand. The goal then becomes, well, how do you find value in a segment? How do you find value in the direct audience that you really care about? And so, like, that was a big lesson for me at a larger organization, was you still have to isolate value, but it becomes really important to figure out the who, to narrow it down as much as possible so they can actually target your audience and understand really what the exact workflow is, and how they are different from another audience. So we always talk about differentiation in the product. Also differentiating in the audience and the user is really, really key. Cisco was also great because I discovered the communities of open source and big data, and that kind of led to my next stage of my career, working at a company called Cloudera, early stage, when they were just kind of figuring out what product marketing was and how it could serve them. One of the neat things about tech today is you have a lot of companies who have very few barriers to product adoption. Their product is free, their product is open source, their product is purely SaaS. But then the challenge becomes, okay, how do they not only launch new features to kind of stay ahead of, like, the user game and the value game, but also how do they make sure that the user is entrenched, that the kind of move towards conversion to paying is obvious. And that was really my role at Cloudera, kind of thinking through, like, as we came up with new ways to position not only new features, but existing features as well. How do you tie that into a journey that is highly relevant and that is specific to where not only the product needed to sit within a larger stack, but where the user actually wanted to drive transformation in their organization to use data differently. And really emphasizing that difference kind of helped us focus on category creation and simplifying our message as opposed to complicating it, which is usually the name of the game when it comes to large enterprise tech. The next few years, I joined other early stage startups, SignalFX, which eventually was acquired by Splunk, and Sentry, both great products who were really in need of what their long-term narrative was, and how to not get too far ahead of the market too soon. Because if you have a great product, it's a great start, but your message and your position really become the way to get to exit velocity. Knowing who your audience is, knowing who your user is, and kind of understanding the entire field of influence in terms of adoption and conversion. And the great lesson from those experiences was, have a 2-year plan. Christ, have a 3 or 4 year plan, but have intermediate steps along the way in terms of your positioning and messaging. Have a thesis about what your theme should be and how each theme is incrementally a step beyond the past one in terms of required maturity of the audience. If you start too highfalutin, too strategic, too soon, you'll leave your audience behind. So it's one of those things in sales, they call it buzzword bingo, where the marketers come up with all these buzzy concepts. Buzzword bingo is okay, but the buzziest concepts, the one that is the hardest to consume, the one that's the trendiest or the most novel, put it last, put it at the end of the journey, and create intermediate steps where the audience can come along with you and actually be educated. Those were really key
insights for my time at very, very early stage startups. And then at Pendo, which is a great product marketing company, they've done quite well for themselves in terms of establishing, what is that large narrative for product managers to consume. Great experience overall, and that was a fun time because it was looking at an entire cloud of services and tools, and also thinking through where is the next stage of the business? How do we be strategic and stay ahead of the market in terms of both competition as well as in terms of the trends around software? How do we again think outside in and speak to what's actually happening in our partner, and as opposed to always talking about just our product, just our feature set, just the narrative about how our tools fit together. Instead, think about how our tools fit in the context of larger changes and shifts in how people do their jobs and get things done. And then most recently, I've been at SoundCloud, which is that big shift, that big change. As a passionate, lifelong music lover, being able to find a place where I can go back into learning mode, trying to understand what the consumer experience is like, how brand is actually the tip of the sword in consumer marketing, and it should drive most of the narrative, not so much the product, is a really key insight. So being able to have the product be in service of the brand as opposed to the other way around, because the product rarely will drive differentiation. The brand does a lot of that work, that story, that narrative, that vibe, the logo experience, the surface area of the user's experience before they even touch the product is really important. So product marketing's role there is to make sure that as the product is, the roadmap is being established, that we're actually speaking to the delivering the promise and keeping the user excited. It really comes down to equipment as opposed to feature relevance and usability. You really have to think about what is cool and why, and kind of keep that always focus on how they will associate the overall experience, even off platform, to the product and to the brand, and how they will talk about it with their friends. And the other cool thing about SoundCloud is that it's also part of the creator economy. So there's a marketplace of audiences. There's both the consumer, but then there's also the creator, and being able to think same thing. Do they understand how the product supports the brand promise? Does the product actually deliver on that brand promise? And how can you always be messaging to what the expectations are based on the brand and editorial and all the things that they kind of come to expect what SoundCloud is for before they even touch the platform.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a great summary, a cumulative effort of kind of what you've taken most from each of your backgrounds and experiences, and so interesting to hear those kind of core elements of product marketing before you're even in the role. Being customer obsessed and really understanding the value of your product and what that impact can have on those people you're delivering it to. So very, very interesting journey, and I can't wait to dive in and find out some more. So yeah, obviously here at the PMA, we are advocates for the clear strategic role of product marketing. But as you touched on several times, in that it's not always super obvious, even to product marketers themselves, the role they play within their org. So for you, what does it really look like, and what does it mean to be a strategic product marketer?
Yeah, and it goes back to the title of the session, understand what the problem is, right? So, as I've managed teams and kind of entered companies where there's already an established product marketing role, a lot of the time I will find those product marketers are a little bit frustrated because, they're disappointed that they don't have a closer relationship with the product organization and aren't able to access the roadmap earlier. Or they struggle with a relationship with sales, where sales, believes product marketing should be a service bureau to create whatever asset they need to get their most recent deal done. Sure, those things are frustrating, but there's also a lot of insight there, right? So if you think about the problem, it's that the product marketer feels like they're getting too late access to the roadmap so that they can't influence it,
Mhm.
or that they are not getting ahead of what the messaging and the positioning and the overall kind of strategic enablement should be for the sales organization. They're just kind of like being reactive. That also speaks to where product marketing should think of itself, and not only how the stakeholders should think of us. We need to have some level of hypothesis. Like, we need to actually come to the table not saying, why didn't you let me into this process earlier? Why didn't you be more curious about what your customers would need? Instead, the product marketer needs to say, like, okay, what is the actual biggest problem that we can solve on behalf of the market, using the resources that we have, which are product and sales a lot of the time, or brand in some cases, editorial content in other cases, and build those hypotheses. That is where strategy comes from. It's a thing that product organizations, especially ones that have product operations, do really well, and I think product marketing can actually learn quite a bit from it. It's to say, okay, like, what's the problem to solve? Where, if we actually got ahead of these things, if we addressed them full on, it would not only help our ability to drive adoption and consumption and conversion, but also lifetime value, readiness, differentiation, all those things that we actually think about as our core metrics. And what should we do in order to achieve it? Like, what is that big idea? Or what is it, even better yet, series of big ideas? If there's a problem, it probably doesn't only need one solution. It probably needs many solutions. And so being strategic means actually building those ideas out early. Not about how sales will do its job or about how product will do its job, but about what product marketing can bring to the table, somewhat abstracted away from the roadmap, somewhat abstracted away from the existing sales motion. Be aware of them, have them be informative, but the hypothesis and the strategy come from outside of those things, because you're supposed to be complementary, not fully just like in service of what the sales organization or the product organization is already doing. That's where these like kind of big themes come from, like understanding like how do you actually position not just the new feature, but the product experience overall as valuable to all users, both new and existing. It's how we get into this idea of sales plays as opposed to sales motion, where we say, okay, there's actually a large enough segment of the market that we can attack and do well with by this like repeated activity that has a clarity around what is the use case, what is the problem we're trying to solve, who are the people involved. And so having that hypothesis allows you to start building up that kit of content, that kit of ideas, that kit of guidance and enablement for the sales organization, as opposed to just having like the one tactic or the one asset that they're trying to get across, because you see it before they even see it, and you deliver to them, and then they trust you. So like that like those hypotheses are where strategy comes from, and then the process, like the approach, is more in this like strategic themes and segmented narratives for the product side, and then sales enablement kits, like an entire sales plays for the sales partner. And then, in a consumer context, it really comes down to what is the big moment? If I have to think about what we already know about the market's needs and what our competitors are doing, and the nice thing about consumer is like there's so many users that you always have a sense of like how they're feeling, because you can just like look at Twitter or look at Reddit, or even like follow the industry press, because they're not only reporting on new features, they're also reporting on like the tone of the market and the attitudes of the market, especially when it comes to things like music consumption, and really thinking through like, okay, what do we need to do to drive a transformation? We always have to think about like what, we can't come up with a completely new brand. It is a different team's job. We're not designers. But how do we start to drive a process around the brand thinking differently for its next wave about what's important here and where value is derived, and start to kind of think about like what is the new feature set and the roadmap in service of, and that can be very, very strategic, and it draws closer to your core partners, the ones who rely on you to kind of come up with those early ideas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something I hear all the time. Product marketers really like thriving in that role as the connector between many different departments, and kind of having that like luxury of having the overview of kind of the sales side, the customer side, the product side, and being able to kind of distill it all down, and make it useful, I guess, for everybody else that they're engaging with.
And that distillation is really important. You know, I tell my teams all the time, your job isn't to only listen. It's not only to kind of like pull up to the buffet and taste a little bit of everything, and then, you know, come back to the buffet the next day and taste a little bit of everything again. Your job is to digest. It's to take all those inputs and then figure out how to synthesize a new idea out of them, not just repeat back what you're hearing. Because there's too much information, and frankly, like you said, there's too much bias. Everyone not only has an opinion and an idea of what needs to get done, but they usually have some kind of like personal attitude about, you know, what would make them happy. And their happiness is not the goal. The customer's happiness, the market's happiness, the user's happiness is the goal. So really being able to kind of like distill those things down into the core of the journey and the direction and the thesis is truly the most important thing here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you were mentioning earlier about kind of product marketing being in a great position to identify some of those real pain points across the organization. So I guess, how can product marketers work to identify and also kind of overcome those issues?
Gosh, I mean, it's a very big question, especially in a current situation where we're all distributed, or largely we're distributed in our organizations. We're not, you know, even if we live in the same city as the headquarters, we're not often in the office, you know, kind of rubbing elbows and talking to each other. So it is harder than ever. You know, I think that finding the part of the organization that is closest to the actual experience of the user, and maybe even more importantly, the vision and the goals of the user is really key. So in large technical organizations, I find the best channel for understanding what's important is solution architecture. The people who are actually going on site with the customer and not just saying, okay, how do we implement the solution that you just paid $1 million for? But how do we actually think about future-proofing it against use cases that you have a vision for, and that you have told us will drive transformation, but the product isn't necessarily built for today? Like, getting those insights about the direction that the product can and should go into, and how much it's worth to a series of customers, and kind of pattern matching across those solution architecture ideas is really useful. And like that is the from my experience, the golden vein, like the part of the mountain that has the most value. You know, if you think of input and direction as a mountain, you know, finding that golden vein is really, really key. On the consumer side, it's a little bit trickier because things move so fast and there's so much input. There's so many customers. There are so many places to find information. I actually find it to be really useful to talk to partners in that case. So, you know, in the context of SoundCloud, being able to tap into labels, especially independent labels, and understand what their needs are on behalf of both the creators and the fans, the people who are going to ultimately buy and consume the content, is really key. They tend to have a pretty clear sense of what their problems are and how they already see you as a partner, and like what you're not doing well enough, and where they'd be willing to like immediately change how they were working in order to accommodate some great change from you. So I find partners in the consumer space to be really, really useful. And then in the traditional SaaS space, it really is the product organization. You know, I find that SaaS has also unlocked product thinking in like really valuable ways. People tend to be, you know, more aggressive about like doing that like Amazon PR exercise before they start building anything. They tend to be like much more aggressive about launching you know, tests and experiments and alphas to try and, you know, gather information from the market based on an MVP versus, you know, a fully built product. You know, those folks have all kinds of great data and great insight. And what they're often looking for is someone to help them think through, like, how do you articulate the value? How do you like catch on to like what's truly important here. And taking that insight and saying, let's not only experiment with the product and new features, let's also experiment with our messaging and our positioning. So doing surveys to the consumer side, both existing users and prospective users, even users on competitive platforms, and asking them questions, not just about like which parts of this feature do you like, but like which of these statements actually most aligns to the value that you potentially achieve in this context, even in the absence of the product. So really understanding like where they find value, and then using things like max diff lines of questioning, where you're not just getting like a bunch of good ideas, you're actually getting weighted ideas in a ranking that you're able to tie back to the other insights about the audience. So like going to the market and asking the right kinds of questions, and doing the research beforehand as a product marketer to understand how to do great primary research, how to actually ask the right kinds of questions and structure a survey is an important skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were kind of leading into it really nicely there about how this can really make a huge impact on your go-to-market strategy. But I guess, is there any other kind of ways that you think having this like problem-solving attitude as a product marketer helps your go-to-market strategy?
Well, I mean, the other part of it is knowing whose problems you're talking about. It's another part of the title of the session is like, even if they're not your problems, understanding the problem is really key. And so like, being able to get FaceTime with the most senior executives in the organization, the CEO, the CRO, is important. COO is important for the product marketer, not only for career reasons. You know, just everyone knows that having visibility and having FaceTime is good for advancing your career, especially if you're a non-white, non-man product marketer. Like, you know, okay, so white people and men, try and support your non-white, non-male identifying product marketing colleagues. You know, open the doors for them, especially if you're at your organization earlier. Okay, I'm gonna stop my rant.
Important side
not
note.
only is having that kind of sure, not only having that visibility is important for your career, but it's also important for understanding the variety of problems that can be solved and for whom they're important. Because there is a part of product marketing, especially tied to enterprise products, enterprise software, about CEO marketing, executive marketing, where you're actually understanding the vision that the CEO has for the next stage or the next 2 stages or 3 stages of not only the product, but the market and how they believe, like as we say in American sports, where the puck is going in hockey. So not knowing where the puck is today, but where the puck is going to go in the future. In a lot of cases, the CEO sees the puck leaving the surface of the ice and like trajectory off into space. Understanding that, like really knowing what they're thinking in terms of like what space is the puck going towards, and being able to say, I'm actually going to help serve that. I'm going to serve both our go-to-market for our feature set and what's on the truck today, and understand the market and the user as they are and what their greatest needs are and where their budgets are and what the competitive set is. But I'm also going to understand the problem that we're trying to think about before it even happens. The one that's going to be maybe not the costliest, but the scariest and the most interesting, and the one that has the most like compelling insights around true transformation in the near and distant future, and kind of come up with ways to actually feed opportunities to the CEO, feed those insights into the market, not to mix them with your core go-to-market messaging. You know, you don't put it on like the front page of your website, because again, you know, if you're thinking 2 years out, you can't focus on only that because you will lose your audience. But finding the place for it so that like your 2-year plan is actually in service of something, and you're actually like almost creating the problems before they happen. If you name it, if you talk to the press and analysts about it, then there's a higher chance that it will become true, because they will be looking for evidence to support that hypothesis on your behalf. So really understanding like there's a problem beyond the current problem you're solving. There's also this future problem that you want your business to actually like move towards. And in some cases, it helps with category creation. If you're defining the problem before it happens, you're also defining the category for the solution. And that's a problem to understand as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. It's such a clever kind of big thinking view of like setting the scene for the category creation. Like you said, you can only solve a problem once it's there to solve. Very, very clever.
Confirmation bias is a terrible thing and a wonderful thing. You can really take advantage of it if you know where it lives.
Exactly. There we go. And obviously kind of touching on both your experience in the B2B and B2C product marketing spaces here, is there something that you think that product marketers working in those areas can maybe learn from one another?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so this idea that I said for the most valuable or a valuable activity from a SaaS product marketer is to do research and to survey the market. That comes from consumer. There are very few enterprise or SaaS product marketers that I know of, or product marketing organizations that are doing active audience research surveys around positioning and messaging. That is a practice that is heavily used in consumer and should be even more heavily used in SaaS because like the resonance of the right positioning and the right messaging is more key there than anywhere. I mean, in SaaS, product marketing is almost akin to brand marketing in some ways. So really being able to kind of drive that early message and have it be relevant and be suited to the audience is money. It's valuable to everybody in the organization. So like that is a definite skill. Like understand how to do audience research and how to do audience research in a way that actually leads to the right kinds of insights. So that's a really key opportunity for B2B that they don't practice today. And on the consumer side, what they can learn from B2B is be more structured. There is I have seen in my short time in consumer product marketing a general lack of structure in go-to-market overall. There tends to be such an emphasis on tactics and what content or project the agency partner is going to deliver, as opposed to, frankly, OKRs. This idea that there's like a true global objective that the entire organization, or the entire at least marketing organization, should be focusing on, or a series of them, and how to actually lever results according to those objectives. That kind of structure would be really valuable for B2C, and you see it a lot in B2B. There tends to be more senior product marketers in B2B organizations. There tends to be kind of more marketing leaders with more diversity of experiences in B2B, and they tend to really focus on the structure. They tend to really think of, all the people in their organization are not just here to come up with great ideas and then pick a few and then put budget behind them. They tend to think through like, okay, how does everything fit together into one like integrated marketing motion towards the most important objectives for the company. B2C can learn that. I haven't seen a lot of that, and there needs to be more of it so that effectively budgets aren't wasted, and marketing efforts, especially product marketing efforts, are more focused and aligned to a larger set of goals where everyone is contributing, and the incremental gain is actually less than the total outcome.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this chat has absolutely flown by, but and you've already shared a huge amount of advice. But if there was one piece of advice you'd really love to leave our audience with today, what would that be?
I mean, it gets back to the beginning, like understand problems. As a product marketer, even early in your career, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just focusing on the short-term roadmap. Like, what feature are you going to be taking to market, and how do you start working on that project? Sure, that is job one. Going to market with features and new products is the principal reason for product marketing to exist. But abstract your thinking also in part of your time away from that roadmap to what is the larger narrative around the product and the entire product journey going to be. or what should it be? That's where differentiation comes from. It doesn't come from characteristics of any given feature set. It comes from how we think about the user's experience or different users' experiences across the entire journey, their entire time using your product. And even interacting with your marketing, even interacting with your brand, really understanding what that journey is. And product marketing is well positioned to actually like cultivate some hypotheses around like what that could be and what it should be and for whom. So don't only think about the go-to-market. Think about the larger theme and the larger position that your organization and your product can take, and how to drive that value into the rest of your organization. Finding ways to actually get partnerships within the company to support that version of the go-to-market is a really key opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you again for joining us, Ryan. Like I said, this has been such an informative session and a great look at the wealth of experience that you've had in your career to date. And it's exciting to see what's next for you and the SoundCloud team. So yeah, thank you again. And if people wanted to connect with you further or had questions, what's the best way that they can do that?
LinkedIn is always the easiest. You can find me on LinkedIn. Yep, hit me up on other socials if you can't find me on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is usually the easiest.
Perfect. That sounds good. Well, everyone stay tuned because we will be right back with another session at Product Marketing Trailblazers in just a minute. So don't go anywhere. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you, Rose. Thanks, Product Marketing Alliance.